Lately, we have seen an increased effort to degrade, slander, and force upon the Japanese people multiculturalism, multi-ethnicism, a sort of slow attempt to erode their culture, especially around the Olympics, and to enforce the Western, dare I say, American liberal progressive anti-white but also anti-East Asian worldview, which despises excellence, despises ethno-nationalism. When they see a people doing well in a country who don't have diversity, who don't have all the negatives which come with that, they are filled with rage. And we can see this in these Olympics. This attempt by Western media companies who knows who runs those, trying to push this sort of anti-Japanese agenda onto these people, saying you need to accept diversity, you need to, have this Western progressive worldview, and against the will of the Japanese people. The Japanese have one of the highest anti-immigration sentiments out of any people in the world. Yet this American media establishment, and dare I say to a lesser extent Britain and other Western nations, are trying to force feed this nation the ideologies and the so-called kind, woke, virtuous ideals which are currently causing the downfall of Western civilization. When Shinzo Abe was in power, I believe it was around 2016, that he met up with one of the top people from Israel, and they set up the first synagogue in Japan. And then, of course, you can look this up. I'm not going to go into massive detail on here because I don't want to get banned off YouTube, but then they formed a friendship with Israel, and then all of a sudden you had these Israeli Zionist Jewish politicians sort of arriving in Japan, and one of them got into the Japanese political system, this politician, and was pushing for the same things we see pushed for and what are causing the downfall of our country. And it just makes you wonder, isn't it weird how as soon as Japan became friends with the Israelis, and as soon as a few, not many, but a few Israelis migrated to Japan, they attempted to get in positions of power in politics and promote certain anti-Japanese, anti-ethnocentric ideals. That's very interesting because it reminds me a bit of a situation we have in this country. Bit on the nose this, I don't want to go into too much detail, but you can look up Shinzo Abe's acceptance of an Israeli friendship and then subsequent immigration of several Jews to Japan who then went to promote multicultural ideals. This is a real thing, look it up. I don't want to say too much, but it is a very interesting topic. But it's not just that. Like I said, it is the Western media trying to push these people who don't want multiculturalism, multi-ethnicism, wokeness. They don't want this stuff as a population. They're very patriotic, nationalistic people. And so was Abe for a while. And it seems that these interesting people, certainly in Western media, but also the sort of global capitalist and banking enjoyers, do like to degrade and try and tear down any basically ethno-state which is successful and happy and doesn't fit their agenda and is happy being sort of isolated on its own. As you'll know, Japan doesn't allow a lot of immigration, and it's very strict about, not allowing even people with like visas to buy houses and things. It's very strict and for its own people country. It's a very nationalist country, and it's such a shame that the globalists, I guess is the correct term to use without getting banned, but also, you know, the sort of global media and all that coming from the West is deliberately trying to force this, quite frankly, anti-Japanese agenda on these people. And it seems like they are doing to Japan what they've been doing to us for a while, and they're just getting started. And I really hope the Japanese reject this and see the, you know, the leaves for the trees. Because, you know, when I speak to Japanese people in Japan, not Japanese people in the West who've grown up here and gone through our education system, even though a lot of them are still based, but people in Japan, they don't really know what's going on in the West, and if you explain to them, they think it's ridiculous, they think it's a clown world, which it is, and I don't think that these people deserve to be just have things force-fed to them that they don't want. And sometimes being pumped into their media from the West without the consent of the people. The people don't have the consent. It's the elite who are trying to push this onto them from the West into the Japanese elite, and then that gets filtered down onto the people, and the people don't want it. But that's what's happening. And they're using the Olympics as a springboard to do this. And as well, it's because these people hate excellence, these globalist types. They hate excellence. They hate ethnocentrism and they hate excellence, and the Japanese are an excellent people, very successful people. It's just a real shame. If Japan could see the trajectory which this kind of stuff brings them to, what's trying to be thrown onto them, they would oppose it, as they have shown in the past. They've protested against things like immigration, and they have barely any at all, and even then they don't like it. And they've protested against the sort of American social ideals, shall we say, to be politically correct, I suppose, about it. They've protested against the American social ideals in the past. They're not ones for it, yet it is being increasingly pushed on them. And it is a real shame. So I do wish these people well, because in a way they're very similar to European people, or at least how European people used to be a long time ago. Before subversion set in, they were very strong and proud and excellent people, and I hope that they notice sooner rather than later.